Alex, what prompted you to write a parallel universe?
Well, over the past 30 years, we've seen a number of new laws added, both in California and around the country, as a result of high visibility cases and reactions to those cases. And as a result of that, certain politicians and others have put initiatives out there to the public to create laws, which I call designer laws. These laws are really targeted to address a particular issue or concern, but they wind up having much broader consequences and impact areas that I don't think the voters really intended for them to address. So as a result of that, we have a collection of laws which have impacted our prison system, our jails are overcrowded, our prisons are overcrowded, and our criminal justice system is overcrowded. We're spending millions and actually billions of dollars, and the question is, what are we getting for our money? So the book tries to address the fact that there are ways perhaps to prevent crime, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is creating this system which sort of feeds on itself, is very expensive, and doesn't make society any safer, and does not really protect us from future crimes.
What are some of the dangers or problems that face the community as a result of these designer laws?
Well, as I said, first of all, it drains resources from things such as education, medical care, preschool education, prenatal care, various types of things which in the long run make for a better society and prevent crime. And as opposed to that, we are warehousing more and more people, not preventing crimes from really being committed, and not addressing the issues behind why these crimes are committed.
Does it affect ordinary people?
Sure, it affects everybody, because especially now with the budget crisis and the recession, we're having to cut back on essential services as a result of this system that we've created. The United States Supreme Court recently held that the state of California has to reduce its prison population by over 33,000 people. It's a reaction to the problem that we've created, and we continue to have the money to warehouse these individuals and to spend it on results that don't justify the spending of money. I mean, the whole idea, if you were running a business this way and your product or your what you were supposed to be producing was to make society safer and to prevent crime, this corporation would have been bankrupt a long time ago.
And so you mentioned designer laws. What's an example of one?
Well, a perfect example is the idea that when there's a particularly high visibility case, such as the O.J. case, or the one that created Megan's Law, or in California, Marsy's Law. These are laws that basically are supported by an offense or a crime that has been committed that gets a lot of visibility, and then the reaction to it is, oh, we're going to produce this law that will prevent that problem. The reality is that we already have laws on the books that address that problem. We didn't need these new laws. It doesn't make the community any safer, and it creates a situation which I think drains resources away from those things that actually would prevent crime. A perfect example is this latest thing that occurred in Florida, where after the verdict in the Anthony case, there was even though she was found not guilty of the homicide, there's this big uproar, and we need to have new laws. And so there are people introducing or trying to introduce laws named after the deceased child. And again, there are laws on the books that basically do what they're proposing these new laws would do, but they create this atmosphere, this idea that, oh, if we only had this new law. So it gives people false hope, spends a lot of resources in pursuit of that false hope, and creates a situation which really doesn't make things better. It only makes things worse. Besides
the increased expenses from this law that you just mentioned, this proposed law, do you think that it is going to have other negative effects?
Well, it gives I think a false sense of security to the community, thinking that somehow this is going to do away with the problem. And then once again we have a terrible situation occur where someone dies, and obviously the law didn't prevent that. Perhaps there was no way to prevent that, and yet people believe that by passing this new law they were going to be able to get safety or security.
Do you think that a lot of ordinary parents would end up going to prison because of if Caylee's law was passed?
Well, as I mentioned, there's always the unintended consequences of these laws, and the problem is that by crafting them in such a way that they're broad, there are individuals who wind up getting hurt that should never have been impacted. So you might have a situation where somebody does a sleepover and their parent thinks they're over at somebody's house, and they're out of touch with the parent for more than 24 hours, and then something terrible happens. Are the parents responsible for that? Should they have reported their child missing? Is that something that warrants them being charged criminally? Now, I would hope that prosecutors would not charge parents with that type of offense. But again, when you have this fear and publicity around certain types of offenses, it tends to create a situation that is not perhaps good for the individuals who are charged, nor is it good for the community as a whole. And that's the problem with some of these designer laws. They're not well thought out. They're knee-jerk reactions to a particular case which receives a lot of publicity, and they're not an appropriate approach. It's not the type of thing that you would want to use in approaching other types of problems. For instance, if you have a flood at your house, do you go out and buy buckets to keep on catching the water, or do you fix the leak? And that's what we ought to be doing. We ought to be trying to fix the leak as opposed to buying more buckets.